Welcome back to the thebeautyreup podcast. I'm Regina, your holistic baddie. Duh! Hit subscribe to keep the content coming in hot. This episode contains real, raw, lived experiences. Some details have been disclosed intentionally, and others have been withheld for legal, safety, and ethical reasons. What you're about to hear reflects my personal experiences, perceptions, and documented events as I live them. This episode contains explicit content, sensitive subject matter, and references to real-world harm, including abuse of power, identity interference, and psychological trauma. Receipts exist. Documentation exists. There's a difference between betrayal and orchestration, between coincidence and coordination. And when you live long enough inside the system, you learn how to tell when something isn't just happening to you, but being done to you. This isn't just a story about jealousy. It's a story about identity theft at a soul level, about what happens when people mistake access for ownership and proximity for entitlement. Part 1. The stalking that didn't start loud. It didn't begin with threats. It began with attention. Unwanted awareness, people knowing things that they shouldn't, strangers repeating conversations I never had with them, moments being tracked, opportunities dissolving the moment I stepped toward them. Though I didn't know the people that he worked with because I didn't get personal, I usually say to myself, I'm like a popular loner, you know what I'm saying? I do my own thing, I'm in my boss baddie mode by myself. You feel me? Because I had so many incidents where it just doesn't work out, especially with friends that aren't equipped to do what you're doing. So it turns into jealousy quick. I've never been really a girl's girl because a lot of girlies always ended up turning into beef. So I always just kind of stay by myself. Long story short, he introduces me to these people who pull up in this kind of like little beater, you know what I'm saying? It's some young girl and this black guy. He introduced me to Ryan. So he says, I work with them, they're my co-workers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, peaced out, right? Went back to the house, I'm taking care of the kids, I'm hustling, doing what I gotta do, making sure I'm doing what I have to do for me in the household, because nobody was helping me, period. So he comes back to the house one day with his stuff, and I'm like, why are you even here? Because mind you, I had a PFA. So he would just stop by at random, just to like start some shit. So I'm like, what is the problem with this? You know what I mean? Like, but here, it's all an orchestrated trap. Long story short, he was messing with this girl. Of course, I didn't care because we were technically separated. I was begging for a divorce, but he wasn't allowing me to get out of the marriage without something he said. A lot of people didn't know the extent of the abuse because I wasn't allowed to talk about it. And there was a lot of times where I was silenced for even talking about it. I ended up finding a bag of clothes near my door. So I'm like, what is this? I open the bag and it's his pants and it has all this white stuff on it. So I end up bringing all the shit that I found to the job site, put it on top of the car that he was using, even though it was my car, and I spread it out all over the parking lot. Don't come back, get dirty, you know what I mean? All this stuff. We weren't even sleeping together at the time because we were separated. He kept saying that he had no place to go, so on and so forth. I kept telling him to go to the American Rescue, which is the man's shelter or whatever the case may be. And it was always a physical altercation when this stuff was happening. So I had no like worries or concerns about no other woman because I didn't want nobody. You know what I mean? I wasn't paying attention to this thing. I just wanted him to leave. I wanted him to stop being obsessed. I wanted him to stop stalking me. I wanted him to stop being so attached to something that didn't even belong to him. I didn't even, it was just disgusting. It didn't begin with threats. It began with attention. The one day she seen me in the parking lot would literally start the turn of events I wouldn't think I'd ever see. Of course, me putting the stuff out front of TGI Fridays caused some attention. He thought it was leverage. All my life would now be thrown to the streets as a twisted tale. Unwanted awareness, people knowing things they shouldn't, strangers repeating conversations I never had with them, moments being tracked by air tags illegally, opportunities dissolving the moment I stepped towards them. I enjoyed being back on the medical scene, working as a phlebotomist at the local plasma center after I thought the abuser had done, distracted himself with like a trap house or something he created. But no, they were soon at my job on the low, donating plasma. After the orchestrated rumors and chaos, I had to forfeit my position, but not without force. I went back after my resignation to be honest about, stalker and the personal issues that I had going on. And it wasn't until my coworker I used to kind of kick it with. She says, you know he didn't come here alone. So my private investigator, senses started tingling. I drove to the local gas station area and, I know one of the women behind the register. And she knows the ops. So she kind of informed me of the casualties and the company that had sabotaged me again. And now another police report. At first I told myself I was just tired, like overworked, traumatized. But patterns don't lie. This wasn't one person. This was coordination. What many would recognize as gang-style harassment, where pressure is applied socially, financially, physically, psychologically, until a person destabilizes. Not really to destroy them, but to replace them. So the assets that went missing, of course, then came the money. Not stolen in a dramatic robbery, of course, but quietly redirected. My dad's inheritance I found in the New Jersey unclaimed property. I was working to prove my claim, of course, but was soon sabotaged by the abuser I found stealing my mail. So I asked where my package was, and he had completely gaslit me one day when I had received the package in the mail for Amazon. So one day I ordered a package from Amazon, and only the box came. And I asked about the package, completely gaslit me, told me to ask the mailman. So I go out there and I argue with the mailman for about 20 minutes about where my sparkly bill went. Yeah. On some grown-up shit. Like, what? We hadn't been intimate in a very long time. I was going through a divorce, obvi. And the night that my daughter was conceived, he just took it way too far. Again, putting the substances in my food. Drinking, gaslighting, trying to avoid his accountability. I just stayed to myself, went through the pregnancy on and off alone. But, I digress. Now I'm noticing at the time that my letters are missing and other items start becoming missing. So soon I noticed that when I went back to check the claim over a month later, because of the orchestrated chaos and opportunity, the abusers hoped to put my work, my only working laptop in the sink of water. Of course, soon the accounts are never closed, assets are never touched, funds that should have been dormant but intact. Instead, they were now flagged, delayed, rerouted, and marked unclaimed. In New Jersey's unclaimed property system, assets tied to my name were no longer behaving like mine. And when I tried to trace them, I met walls, contradictory paperwork, inconsistent records, and explanations that changed every time I asked the same question. This is where I realized something chilling. Someone wasn't just watching me, they were attempting to wear my life. Took extreme cases with the money by paying for spell work and trips and plastic surgery and Sesame Street crack magic to continue to attack me mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. I believe God's revenge is the only revenge. So stealing my money, doing fraud, trying to wear my skin, including destroying a marriage that was already over and force a pregnancy for extra for me, my dime, my kids, my household to continually be destroyed. To protect a predator seemed like a waste of fucking time. The hostile environment. Pressure escalates when replacement fails. Him dropping off clothes or items to my home, even with a restraining order and a recent jail term for multiple charge attempts, and breaking contempt of the restraining order, they apparently decided to team up. And that teaming up would be an effective way to get what they had already stolen and to keep it from coming to light. The day I took the last bag of items to the trap house, he and his underage mistress were all supposed to be roommates. I found out later that the cover-up was the age discrepancy. She was about the age of my oldest child, which made me sick to my stomach. Not being the other woman, because nobody's jealous about scraps. But, just the thoughts that ran through my mind that completely judged him in a whole different way. My mind instantly knowing that his homeboy just did the same thing with another female who was just turning 18 around the time he was around 35 or so. Gave me, needless to say, multiple reasons to not want my kids around the situation. I took it to the police, I took it to children and youth, I even notified the school of the ongoing issues that kept arising suddenly and behind the scenes. With another charge of now another strangulation, this time was different. He had drugged me into the home and held me down on my throat. I'd seen almost all the Dexter episodes at this point, so I knew I had to get the fuck out of there and save myself from my kids. They started showing up at my job. They started showing up at different places just to destabilize everything that I was starting to rebuild. Suddenly, every environment became hostile. Workplaces, housing, courtrooms, medical settings. Not openly violent, but destabilizing. Policies applied selectively, rules bent strategically, documents appearing with errors I never made, signatures that weren't mine, dates that didn't align. This wasn't chaos, this was administrative violence. A system can hurt you without it even touching you, even if people decide not to see you. The paper trail that didn't match reality. Fake or altered documents don't need to be perfect. They only need to be accepted. Records contradicted lived reality. Statements were attributed to me that I never made. Legal filings appeared that didn't reflect events as occurred. Tax forms, socials were being used without my consent or knowledge. She showed up to multiple court cases without cause, just to commit more perjury, to now come for my kids, after she thought she'd broken an already dead marriage. I actually was glad she took the trash out, but soon I realized it wasn't him she wanted. It was my life. Using fake accounts, paying for stalking, sliding court cases, using race, all to use money to get plastic surgery, drugs. Everything was to just, by any means necessary. They thought it was a competition I wasn't even competing for. The time that my son had went over there and my kids were being watched the last time they had a visitation, they were beat by the metal part of a belt. They weren't fed properly. They didn't even have car seats for transportation. I reported that to the court. I had to protect my safety and even my kids, even if the court refused to do it. I found out soon enough everyone was being, money being stolen, rerouted, funds, assets, property, child support. I had to plead for the paperwork for the divorce to be even accepted. By then, they immediately took vacations on the stolen money and allocated a fake marriage to continue the fraudulent financial theft and transactions built off my past loved ones, my name, and my legacy, and my children. And when challenged, I was met with investigations. I was met with dismissal, even though this was clear manipulation, retaliation from a sewer maiden and a predator who bent their backs and stole and pocketed to try to step into a glass slipper that didn't fit is crazy in itself. But to take it to the extremes where you're villainizing the victim, meanwhile vandalizing property, stalking, stealing, and sabotaging people's lives, and then publicly assassinating someone's character and livelihood is beyond extreme. That's when it became clear the goal wasn't justice. The goal was exhaustion, because people stop fighting when they're tired. That's when it became clear the goal wasn't justice. The goal was exhaustion, because tired people stop fighting. Corruption by silence. Here's the part most people don't want to hear. Corruption doesn't always look like villains. Sometimes it looks like officials who didn't notice, couldn't verify, weren't authorized, or simply chose not to intervene, or documents erased completely out of the system. I noticed extreme conflicts of interest between the legal parties and presiding judges. Even me, self-litigating, was a trap. Silence becomes a weapon when it protects harm, And when illusions fail to correct obvious inconsistencies, they stop being neutral. They become participants. The destiny swap that failed. Here's the truth. They didn't account for. You cannot steal someone's destiny by stealing their resources. You cannot become somebody by erasing them on paper. You can't steal somebody's life because you try to steal their man. Because identity isn't just documentation, it's alignment. And when someone tries to step into a life that isn't encoded for them, everything collapses. The money doesn't stick, the power turns toxic, and the masks start cracking. What was meant to elevate them, expose them. This next episode isn't the end. Because what happens after identity theft fail is far more dangerous than the attempt itself. When replacement doesn't work, systems escalate. Next episode, we're talking about abuse of power, how authority reacts when control is threatened, and why surviving institutional harm requires more than innocence. It requires strategy. Because the truth is, I didn't lose my identity. I outlived their lie. So thank you so much for listening to this podcast episode with me. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like. You know what I'm saying? Give your girl some hearts. Give me a comment. You can always find me at thebeautyreup on all my socials. I love you. Thank you for listening, and I will catch you on the next ep. Bye.